What's up, everybody, man? Back. Welcome to a brand new video, and today I will be checking out and reviewing the newish Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla Evolved Godzilla 2024 from Godzilla Kong: The New Empire. There he is. Let's check him out. So Bandai Movie Monster Series has done a Godzilla Evolved from GXK: The New Empire. I'm so glad they did this. For a moment it seemed like they maybe weren't gonna, so I'm glad that they did this thing. It's very neat. I'm very happy about that. I have been wanting to pick this thing up for quite some time. I just really haven't come across it in the wild. But the other day I was at the mall and I found this thing at FYE and they were selling it for $50. $50! When I was in Tokyo not that long ago, just a little over a year ago, these bad boys were selling for like the equivalent of $10, 10 US dollars, which is what they are made for. Like, that's what the purpose of them is. In the US, it's standard to buy these things for $20, $25, and that seems fine to me. 50? Are you freaking kidding me? It's the reason I don't have the Bandai Movie Monster Series Kong with a Beast Glove. I'm not gonna get that thing for $50. But I came across this guy, and I said, no thank you. So I passed on it, and I found it at another store, and it was only 30 bucks, which still feels expensive, but not too expensive. So I grabbed it, especially because I'm used to Movie Monster Series going for $35 in the US, so kind of felt nice. I got this in the US from a US store, which means you know the rule. The Bandai tags don't stay on for figures I buy in the US. I tried getting the tag out, but it left this little thing sticking out of him right here. You can see the little tag is still sticking in him. When I ripped it out, it snapped rather than coming out. Here's the Movie Monster Series tag. Got the GXK logo, the pink and blue right there. Pretty cool. Got Godzilla Evolved's spines right here. Why are some of those spines so bent into each other? What's up with this one, like completely bending into the other? That's silly. And then you've got Godzilla's silhouette on the inside, looking pretty cool. Now, in terms of movie accuracy, he seems sort of movie accurate. It's definitely the general silhouette of Godzilla Evolved. The spines are like generally the right size compared to the body. I feel like the head is generally the right size compared to the body. The arms feel like they're the right length. So do the legs. He also feels like he's appropriately slimmed down. The tail looks pretty much right. It's very long tail. Maybe the spines could have been just a little longer. Maybe that's one thing that would have helped it if the spines were just a little longer. But overall, looks pretty much like the movie. The paint, on the other hand, does not look totally like the movie. In the movie, he's a lot less gray and he's a lot more brown, depending on the shot. I guess when he rises up in the Arctic, he looks pretty gray, but for the most part in the movie, he does come across more brown. And with that, I want to try something new. Shout out to Shinrobjira for giving me some advice on where I could get some backdrops to up the production value of my figure reviews. Now, this is going to be a learning process. I'm going to have to learn how to set this up better, but for today, I thought it'd be fun to try out. So let's turn it on over. Hey, pardon the lighting. It's a new setup. We'll learn it as we go. You know, like I said, brand new setup. I wanted to up the production value this year, and hey, we're starting out today, so we're gonna figure this out. Over time, it'll get better, so just stick with me for now. We're learning. First things first, let's get this thing off, if possible. Oh, is this gonna live there forever? No! I mean, that's probably the best I can shave it down. That is kind of annoying, and it hurts too. That sucks. That might just be a permanent part of my figure. On the whole, I think that this figure is alright, which isn't that big or bold of an opinion. I have a very similar thoughts to the Godzilla 2019 from Bandai Movie Monster Series, as we'll talk about in a bit. It's a solid 6-inch Godzilla figure for the lower end market. You know, like, this is meant, generally speaking, for kids, not exactly collectors. You know, this isn't your X Plus, this isn't your SH Monster Arts, this is essentially Playmates. So generally is a pretty good figure. I really like the in-hand feel of it. It's got a great vinyl feel. That's something that Bandai Movie Monster Series does really well, is that really nice vinyl feel. So I do like that here as well. And then on the whole with it, I think it's sculpted fairly well. He's got a really nice face, and I really love these like ridge lines running down Godzilla. I love the spines on the top of the head as well, especially like this crown on the top of Godzilla's head is super cool. And overall, he does have a really nicely sculpted face. I like how you can see Godzilla's got this nostril sculpted on. The teeth are not individually sculpted, but they do generally look all right. I think the jawline and the whole face looks pretty solid, especially that area around the eyes looks really cool. But really, it's the textures running through the body. Once we get into the neck and we start to go down the body, I like these scales right here especially. Those are always great. MonsterVerse figures tend to do a pretty good job with those. The way that the scales transition from one texture to the next is really cool. I like the way we get into this skin texture right here and then going down through the body. The arms are done all right. Like, I think they look pretty good. The textures on them are pretty decent. They could, I think, be a little stronger, especially right up here. They do have the general right aesthetic of Godzilla's arms from the movie. The hands look pretty good as well. Cute little fingers there. And then he does have the arm blades sculpted on, which is neat. The legs look really good. Godzilla's got a great bumpy texture here. He has that really nice alligator hide right here, which is cool. Goes into the knee, which always looks great on these things as well. And then down into the foot, which looks okay. The tail itself is actually really smooth, and I do not understand why, but it's really smooth across the whole tail. The bottom of the tail has texture, but again, very shallow, very smooth. And it's actually the same issue you run into on the front of the body as well. The front of the body is very smooth throughout Godzilla. He has texture for sure. This chest is very shallow. That is something that I think holds this figure back. The spines themselves are very nicely sculpted. They look great, except they don't have much texture to them. Like, there is some depth on it, and I like that you can see, for instance, right here, they have sculpted on where Godzilla's original skin hide is still left on the new crystal spines that have been unearthed, but it's painted the same color, which kind of takes away from it. There is very subtle texturing on this big spine right here, but it's just not deep enough. Godzilla's spines in the MonsterVerse have these really nice deep grooves that really make them shine, and this figure does not have that. The paint job is alright. Godzilla is this nice matte gray overall. It's the color across his whole body. There's no real highlighting, shadowing, or anything like that. It's just gray. The front of him is also, unfortunately, just kind of gray. It looks the exact same. It's not painted a different color at all. It's the same gray as the rest of the body. The spines look really nice. I really like that. They've got this wonderful glossy, almost metallic quality to them. They capture the light really well. They shine super well. I need better lighting in here so I can show these things off better, because it does look really cool. I really like the spines. I think the paint job's wonderful. It goes up onto the neck and onto the top of the head, which is awesome. The eyes themselves are also painted that little pink color, which looks great. While the tongue and the mouth and everything isn't painted a different color, there is this very subtle, almost imperceptible coloring going on with the teeth, which is interesting. The paint job carries over onto the tail, where I think it's just a difference in the plastic or something, but the glossiness of the tail is much stronger than the body, even in terms of this gray color. The pink on the spines looks really good as well, and it runs through the back of the tail all the way through the tip, where Godzilla's got his thagomizers, I think is what they're called, sculpted on, which look pretty cool. They've also done a good job painting the actual crystal spike on Godzilla's arm. A new format. I know the lighting's whack. I know the audio is probably weird between these cuts, and I also forgot to do this in the other recording. As for articulation, this is a pretty standard range of articulation for a Bandai Godzilla figure. Unfortunately, the head cannot turn side to side, and the tail does not feature any articulation as well, although it is a soft vinyl tail, so feel free to flex it and bend it at your will. You can do that as much as you want. It might hurt your plastic, but you can. The arms can spin all the way around as you might expect, and again, soft plastic, so you can bend them in and have Godzilla get his little slaps on in there. As for the legs, as you might have expected, they too can spin all the way around, so decent range with that as well. And that's all there is for articulation. 4 joints, that's it. Very standard. This figure suffers from a lot of the same issues as this figure. These are the two Godzillas from Bandai together. This is the Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla 2019 and the Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla 2024. As you can see here, they're pretty much the same size. The Godzilla 2019 has a little more bulk. He's actually a little more imposing of a figure, although the 2024 appears to be just barely taller. But overall, they both suffer from the same issues, and it seems to be a lack of care for the quality of these Bandai Movie Monster Series MonsterVerse figures. And their issues tend to stem from all of the same things. Like, they both have these kind of smooth textures. They have texture. It's just not as deep as you would want. And I think that's very interesting. I think a lot of that comes down to the fact that they are American Godzillas, and I think that Bandai does not put the work in on these things the same way that they do for a Japanese Godzilla. But overall, these two figures do look pretty cool next to each other, and they do complement each other very well. I love the blue spines transitioning to the pink spines, and I do think there's a pretty cool evolution here. I really like having both of them. I'm glad I got both of them. For comparison, here's the Playmates Godzilla Evolved, and I think it has issues of its own for sure, but it's got different issues. Like, I think the Playmates one looks a little sillier, especially with the eyeballs, but overall, it does have a lot of strengths to it. Like, there is a lot more texture in the spines. I think those crystal spines are done very cool with the translucent plastic. The Bandai one, I think overall has a much stronger silhouette and sculpt, but the Playmates one, I think, has a stronger paint job. They actually did paint Godzilla's chest. It does have a subtle brown color, whereas this one's just purely the gray color. And he does have, like, cooler arm spines as well. Considering that these are both figures for, like, the children's end market, I like the Bandai one more. I think it's a better figure. It just looks much more like Godzilla Evolved. But I would actually recommend picking up the Playmates one simply due to the price point. I mean, $10 versus $30, it's just not the same. This is not 3 times greater of a figure than this one. I could see this being a $20 figure. No more. This is not not worth 3 times more than this. Maybe twice as much. But they do have different strengths and different weaknesses. I actually think the tails are interesting as well because I actually like the Playmates tail a little better. The Thagomizers look better on it. Like I said up top, I did not get the Bandai Movie Monster Series Kong at this time. He was simply too expensive. So here's the Playmates Kong. He's about the same size. He's a little smaller. He actually looks pretty size accurate compared to the movie. He looks pretty cool next to him. I like having the two of these guys next to each other. That's a cool little pair. I have such a learning curve with this new camera setup. This is like tripping me up. It's hard to aim these frickin' things. To really make my point, here's the big guy. The Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla -1 versus the Godzilla Evolved 2024. They're both decent figures, and they're both very similar. I actually like that there's a height difference here. That's neat. You can really see the quality difference, can't you? Like, look at the texture and the depth of the sculpt on the MaiGoji. Look at the muscles in the leg and the detail there compared to this, which is now seeming very flat in relation to each other. Even little things like texturing the feet. I understand that -1 has much larger feet and they're easier to texture, but it's just they didn't even make the same attempt with the Godzilla Evolved. And with the paint job, MaiGoji's got a nice red mouth. He's got detailing like highlighting all over the body. He's got this really nice brown highlights going all over. And this one is just flat. It's just a flat figure. There's no way to look at these two figures side by side without seeing it. I mean, the MaiGoji is overall, it's a stronger figure. And it speaks to a lack of quality care that Bandai puts into these American Godzillas. I think it's interesting that they put so much more effort into the Japanese ones. Overall, I think it's an alright figure. I think it has its pros and its cons. On the whole, the silhouette and the sculpt I actually think is very solid on this thing, but the depth of the sculpt is lacking, just like on the Godzilla 2019. Now, one thing I really appreciate is that they clearly didn't just make it the same Godzilla. Like, dude's got different feet, he's got different legs, different arms. The arm length isn't even the same. The body isn't reused. The tail's not reused. New one's got a much longer tail, especially because it does not have the same bend in it. The spines are obviously not reused. They've obviously had to go from the ground up on them. And it feels very different. So the two of them are worthy companions of one another. There is a benefit in getting both of them. I really appreciate that. But it's when you compare it to the Godzilla -1 and other Japanese Godzillas that Bandai has made figures of, you just see there is a lack of quality between the two. There is a clear higher level of quality and care with this one than with this one. But with all of that said, I actually still like this thing a lot. And if this were at a $10 price point, I'd probably still give this thing a 9 out of 10 because at the $10 to $15 price point, this is fantastic. Once you move beyond that, that's where I'm gonna have to be like, I spent 30 bucks on this, and is it worth 30 bucks? No. So I'm gonna have to give it a 7.5 out of 10. I just don't think it is there. I think there's more that could have been done. The tail needed more texture. The whole body needed more depth in the texture. There needed to be more grooves in the spine. The paint job needed browns in the front, and he just needed more detail overall. That's not to say it's a bad figure, it's just to say that there's more that could and probably should have been done with it. So I'm gonna give it a 7.5 out of 10. I do think it's worth it if you have the money for it, especially if you can find it for a lower price. The lower the price you can find this for, the more worth it becomes, obviously. But I think it's pretty cool. Do you have the Bandai Movie Monster Series Godzilla Evolved? If so, comment below and let me know. I know the lighting and probably the focus is gonna be weird during this review, but generally speaking, aside from those things, did you like the new format? Do you like the potential for the new format? And if so, do you have any advice on how I can improve it? I'd love to hear your thoughts down below. Thank you guys so much. As always, I want to give a huge thank you to my patrons over on Patreon. It is due to the support of the patrons on Patreon that I'm able to review figures like this for you in the first place. And so if you want to support the Patreon, you can using the link in the description below where you can get early access to content, access to the Discord community, and more. If that's not your thing, please consider joining as a channel member to get exclusive perks. Thank you all for watching. I hope you enjoyed. I will see you all next time for the next one. D-Man out.